And we're live, I think. Cool.
Yep, we're good. Hey, Nathan.
Hey man, good to see you again. We
See you too.
I'm changing some lighting. We're trying some different things out.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just scrambling about a minute before we went live, trying different seating positions in this room to get the right light. This light's pretty terrible, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Some feedback I've been getting from some people has been about eye contact. Oh, wait a
Yeah.
minute. I hear
Well, I see you. Am I out?
Okay, here we go again. I had the tab open, the YouTube video started, so there was some echo. Anyway, so I've been getting this feedback about eye contact. I gotta, look at the camera
Mm.
more. But you and I, we talk about this stuff that's like, none of this is scripted. I have no idea what we're about to talk about. And so it's like, I've got to like do all this deep thinking about, previous things and narratives and ideas and challenges that it's like, my eyes normally just go into the sky and go all around it. I don't know. I don't know. I was actually reading in like Scientific American, just looking this stuff up about like, there's a study that they did that like forced people's eyes to move back and forth to like access different stuff in their, to
Oh,
hopefully invoke, multiple hemispheres, both
yeah.
hemispheres of their brain. And like the quantity and the quality of their ideas like jumped considerably. Um,
Interesting.
because I even look at when we talk, when you talk, you're looking around. It's hard to always just be focused in this one thing and like try and get a point across or think about something.
I
But
heard this weird thing. Yeah, which I typically when I think like I have a hard time doing this because I have to sit still and I usually like to walk around when I'm thinking or talking. So so there's that, and then the other thing is that I heard, and this is not scientifically backed up by me. It might be true, it might not be, but your eyes use about 10% of or your ocular nerve uses about 10% of your like processing power, basically. And so
hmm,
sometimes you'll close your eyes to think really hard, and there's like a sort of a biological reason for that, that you reclaim some of that juice that you're not using processing visuals. So I think
that's very
sometimes when you
interesting.
kind of look away or you look down or you squint or something, part of that is going on is that sort of movement going on that you're like, I'm gonna shut some visuals off here so I can think. But I like to think in a rhythm. I'm just terrible at sitting still and thinking. It doesn't work for me. But anyway, I got to get better at it.
No, I agree. Especially with writing, and I've been trying to convince people of this too. Like I feel like so many people write and they sit down at a keyboard and they come to me and they complain like, how are you getting so much written, or like how do I get more done or get better at it? And like I swear, one of the best things that has improved my writing output and even the quality of output has been not just sitting at a keyboard, but like I will go and I walk around and I talk out a thought or a process. Like I'll go talk to myself. I'll walk down the hallway, or I'll be standing in the shower, just kind of like giving a fake presentation, and then I'll write that stuff down.
Yeah.
And there's just something about the motion and the movement, and even speaking about it while I'm moving around that's better than sitting down at a computer and typing. And
Sometimes I imagine that people must think I'm schizophrenic or something because I'm sitting there. Actually, that's the wrong word. Maybe it's the right word. I'm talking to myself as I'm walking down the street all the time, and all I'm doing is thinking through ideas. I'm not talking to anybody else. I'm talking to myself, uh,
exactly.
and just kind of trying to work out how I would say something or how it sounds. So yeah, I do that all the time.
Totally, man. And like I'll be driving home from the office and there's a bunch of traffic on the way home in Chicago, and like I'll be just in traffic and I'll just be kind of hanging out, sitting there, talking to myself as if I was like giving a presentation or a blog post. And like, I've got no earpiece in or anything. I'm curious what people think when they see me doing that. You're saying schizophrenic, or maybe I'm
Yeah,
singing a song.
yeah. Who knows? But anyway, cool. Well, this is good. We're on day 3 here. We're 5 minutes in. Let's get to it because we got about a half hour max. So
Cool.
something we were talking about a little bit earlier before the show here was the fact that with High Rise, what you guys are doing is we spun it off from Basecamp or from 37 Signals, and it's a standalone product now and a standalone company and a standalone team. But that's like structurally that's true. Technically, you guys are still on our infrastructure. still using 37ID for managing users and all that stuff, which is complicated to pull away from, because it involves like building new systems. There's already systems there to make it work, but eventually the idea is to make this completely separate. So you've got those challenges, those technical challenges, which are like deep infrastructure, heavy, messy, ugly challenges in some ways. And they take a lot of effort and work. And there's sort of a timeline. We got to get this done. Let's call it 18 months or whatever we've talked about. Meanwhile, like, you want to keep moving the product forward. And so prioritizing the separation and the product improvement has got to be a real challenge. What are you doing now, or are you not doing it? How's that going?
It's going okay, not as well as I want to. I mean, this is something that I still struggle with constantly. And yeah, like, I mean, to even give a little bit more color to what you just described, like, we have, like, yes, we use, your authentication system. We use, Basecamp's billing system. And as we've just, and as it would be, you guys probably would be generous about still using some of these things, but it's like, it would just be best if we owned them and we had them. You didn't have to support us. We could do some of our own kind of, thoughts and ideas around them, or what we need to do with them. Different billing plans or whatever, and not have to communicate this stuff with you guys, obviously. And that was the plan, to kind of pull all this stuff out. But it's even more than that, even foundationally, like, we're on some legacy stuff. For example, search. Search could be greatly improved in Highrise. I want search to be a lot better. We're on an old, I believe, Solar search instance, and it's we could use improvements that have been made in later versions. To accomplish this, though, isn't as simple as like standing up or upgrading the server. I mean, we need to get Basecamp's operations involved, and we don't really want to do that. We don't want to like have to keep slotting in. Using your operations team is a friction. It's a process full of friction, because you guys have your own priorities and we have our own priorities. Like, it's hard to. I don't want to have to make them do that. Like, I want to be going away, not adding more tasks to your team for improvements for us. So there's all those things that we want to get done and improvements we want to get done. And meanwhile, there's so many things that are just maintaining the current app. Like the other day, for months now, we've been having some performance problems with email searches on the API, and like for really big accounts. And it took a while to kind of figure out the best way of fixing this. But all we're really doing is, this is just a maintenance and making the current product, more efficient. And it's a small subset of people that are going to see this, but it's necessary, because it's there's the big accounts are having some pain, and it slows down the whole system in the end, because they hog up some resources and then it spreads. And meanwhile, like, Highrise, like, most people know, I mean, this is a product that was developed. You guys released it in like 2006, 2007. And you've made some improvements, but it's you've spun it off so that it gets a lot more love. There's so many ideas that we have, from really big feature improvements to the current product that would just really level up, I think, what we're doing, and maybe even new products. I've got half a dozen new things that I'd like to see in the world that could potentially live inside Highrise, but don't necessarily have to. I mean, we could launch some new products, and it would maybe be freeing, because we don't have to worry about the current infrastructure if we were to just start from scratch. So there's a lot of stuff, but we only have a team of, 7. There's a designer, customer support, a CTO, a half-time contractor, another full-time developer, and me doing development. And I'm also spread on, spreading the word about Highrise and doing all this other stuff. And a chief operating officer now, which is helping me out. But still, like, it's hard to have the resources to improve the current product, fix customer support issues, get some of the low-hanging fruit done, do all the infrastructure upgrades, and hopefully level up the product to become something like even more competitive, in the marketplace of CRM and contacts management. I don't really have a solution. I mean, the solution has really been, like, we've talked about in the last episode, these train schedules. Like, I'm going to release something in 3 weeks, and there's going to be 3 things on it. Like, we've got to figure out what those are. That helps a little bit, right? I mean, it helps us kind of look at like, okay, if we have to send out an announcement in 3 weeks, we've got to find some stuff to do. It definitely narrows the options. Like we can't announce a new Android app in just 3 weeks. So we've got to find some stuff to work on that's going to probably be smaller. Meanwhile, hopefully we're working on bigger projects like an iOS app or an Android app, in a different kind of thread. And that happens. But I don't know. I still don't feel like we're getting enough of the really big things, the really big new ideas that I would like to see done. And it's, yeah. I'm not quite sure what to do with those. Bring in yet another person. I don't like spending money. I don't want to keep bringing in more people. Do I, put more of the low hanging fruit on the back burner, and just spend longer cycles getting some new stuff out? Do I spin up new projects and hopefully reel them in later into high rise if they get any kind of traction? I don't know. It's a little complicated.
It's hard. It's really hard. I mean, I remember talking to so before Dick Costolo was CEO of Twitter. He used to run a company that was based here in Chicago called FeedBurner originally, and then I think Google bought them and whatever. And I remember when Google bought them, I talked to Dick about this, and they'd spent like a year plus or more just purely on integrating with Google's infrastructure and not at all working on improving the product, because all the energy they had had to go into this other thing because they got bought by this company, and like they had to sort of get integrated with the technology, and they had to rewrite a bunch of stuff. So it was like rewriting not for improvement on the customer side, but rewriting for improvement on the back office side, basically. And it's just the product kind of stagnated. I think it kind of ultimately sort of died or became something else, or I'm not even sure what actually ended up happening to FeedBurner, but I remember that was the first exposure I'd had to someone I knew who had been going through a process of assimilation, basically, even though what you're doing is the opposite, but it's the same kind of pressures, which is splitting something apart that relies on, like, fundamentally at the root relies on, like, you couldn't just tomorrow change the infrastructure. Like, high rise would not be available. Like,
right.
So it's like, it's so fundamental. It's hard. And to do it when you ultimately finally finish it or whatever, to have done it without interruption. Maybe there is like a 1 hour downtime at some point that's pre-scheduled, but like hopefully the idea is that doesn't even happen and no one even knows.
Right.
Which means you got to have two things running simultaneously. It's like real challenging stuff. It's good, heady problem, but it's definitely hard to deal with. Yeah.
Did Dick have, I mean, when you knowing Dick and maybe you've had some chance to talk through him, was there any kind of regret or I mean, did you see any kind of process that he wish he had kind of gone through at Google instead? I mean, should they have not done any of the Google infrastructure changes, or should they have pushed back and been like, heck no, we're not doing this in a year. We're going to take 3 years to do it. Meanwhile, we're going to get like these new huge improvements done. Like, was there any changes that you saw that he could have done better?
That's a good question. I don't remember. This is a while ago now, thinking back. I don't even know. Maybe it was just like 6 years ago, 7 years ago. Maybe even longer than that. I'm not sure. But
it was like, I remember
when was that?
I met you and him like at the same time, and I think it had just happened. And that was
this was a long time ago. So I don't remember. I think what I do remember is like just surprise. Like, wow, this is a lot of, like, this is hard to do. And the product which we were working on was the product. Like, when I'm saying they were making FeedBurner, and now they weren't really making FeedBurner anymore. They were making infrastructure, basically. Infrastructure adaptations, and it just felt like they were off the product at that point, and that was kind of probably a surprise. But I really don't remember. It's been a long time, so I don't want to put any words in anyone's mouths. Yeah, but it's pretty interesting. So yeah, that's definitely a challenge. When we built Know Your Company, which we also spun off, we built that product off of our infrastructure. So we didn't do it because we thought we were going to spin it off, but we used Stripe for payment processing. We didn't use 37ID for logging in at all. We did use our infrastructure, I believe, for hosting, but it was I think, but it was so small. And I think they've switched to AWS, or I'm not even sure what they've actually done there. But we didn't do that because we knew we were going to spin it off. We did it to experiment. Like, what would it be like to use Stripe instead of Braintree, which is what we use, or what would it be like to not use the sort of legacy identity system we built and use something else? You know, like, what would these things be like? And it turned out that what was the real benefit was it was easier to split that business off than it was to split Highrise off. But Highrise, of course, is many magnitudes larger as a business, code base, customer base, everything. So it's just naturally harder anyway. But that was a good lesson, I think. And there's this idea we might toy with next year, which is sort of it might be a spin-off from within Basecamp. Hard to explain, but this other thing that if we do this other experiment, we would build it the same way, where we would separate it from our infrastructure just in case we decided to incubate it here and spin it out. Since we're mostly, we're focused on one product now. So if we have other ideas, we've been thinking maybe we can incubate an idea for 6 months and then find an operator to operate it and spin it off separately. Don't know, but like that could happen. If we do start doing things like that, we would definitely need to consider that up front, so we're not building on top of our infrastructure and making this a big hassle for everybody, especially when the team's really small. 6 months in, you've got like 1 or 2, 3 people. Then to have to worry about infrastructure a lot is really tough. And
just to kind of keep it, I won't, because you and I have talked a little bit about, I think what you're talking about, that you're thinking about kind of spinning off as a separate product.
Yeah.
So I won't go into the details of that exactly, but it's like you were thinking of just not even including the stuff in Basecamp and just putting it out as a separate product.
Yeah.
But I think you've changed your mind. Are you?
We're back and forth, actually. So
okay.
We'll be able to talk more about this probably in a couple months. But like, originally the idea started inside this new Basecamp we're making, and then we decided to split it off and experiment. We spent a month. Me and another guy basically spent a month designing this other this idea separately from Basecamp. And then we basically brought it back in, and it might live in both places. It might live in Basecamp, and it might live separately, or it might, I don't know. What we do know is it's going to live in Basecamp with this new release. But yeah, there might be like this is kind of harkens back to the original stuff we used to do. So when we built Basecamp originally, the next thing we released was this thing called To-Do List. To-Do List was just a to-do list. Basically, Basecamp's to-do lists separated out of Basecamp and a standalone to-do list thing. And that's what might happen here too. But Basecamp didn't lose to-dos. So Basecamp kept to-dos, right, but then we spun this little small piece off to standalone because there's standalone use cases for that as well. So that sort of thing might happen here too. I don't know. We'll have to see where that goes. But we did kind of waver and go back and forth. What was interesting though, the moment we split it off, we were able to make really fast progress over 30 days and basically design the entire product in 30, no back-end code aside from HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, but like no Rails or anything like that. Actually, it's a Rails app, but anyway, actually there's a tiny bit of Rails going on. But anyway, point is that in 30 days, we basically made the product. And we were able to move faster because it was separated from the Basecamp code base. We just had less stuff to worry about. And also the fact that we were like off in a corner doing our own thing rather than like doing it and having 12 people give you feedback along the way, which slows everything down. Even if the ideas are good, just does. So that was kind of a really interesting experience as well. That's actually how we built Know Your Company in like 3 months, which was a few of us, me, Jonas, and Trevor, mostly, built Know Your Company in basically 3 months. We did it as a side project, 3 people basically, that was it. And a little bit of help here and there from some others, but that was primarily it, and made it pretty quickly. And we did a radically different business model and all these other things you can kind of do when you're on the side, no one's watching, which is really kind of nice. So anyway, a little bit of background there.
Do you have any kind of metrics that you use before you pull some of the triggers on, say, like hiring more people? Like I could scale up the team bigger. I don't really want to, but it's like when do you when do you say, you know what, forget it. This is too painful to keep doing it with this size. Let's bring in another one. It's, you know, someone else to, you know, help some more. Yeah, but it's like,
Yeah.
where do you stop?
Well, some things are easy. So like customer service is a good example. Customer
Yeah.
service, like we can have a goal, which is like we want to get back to everybody within a minute, which is what we basically do. We get back, if you email our support team, you will get a response on almost every day in about a minute or two. So like, which is sort of unheard of. And that's not an automated response. That's a real person responding to you like personally. To get there, we couldn't do that with 6 people. Like we had a goal and we knew what we had to do to hire up to achieve that goal and get time zone coverage and like all the different things we wanted to do. We had to figure out how to do that, and that just took people. And so, you know, we can't have a 6-hour gap in the middle of the night if we want to be able to get back to people in 2 minutes at 11 p.m. So like that, in that case, you can pretty easily tie metrics to people. And that was actually another interesting discussion because we thought about maybe this. I'll say this for another call actually, or another this idea of night shifts versus day shifts. Remind me to talk about that next time. But the thing about like programmers or designers, it's a lot less clear about what adding an additional person will do in a sort of a quantifiable way. I mean, you know, you'll hopefully get more work done, but that's not always the case. But I think you feel the more work done much more when you have a smaller team to begin with. So if you have like 3 developers and you hire a 4th, major improvement, like just flat out major improvement. If you have 12 developers and you hire a 13th, just less individual improvement, just because you know it's 8% or so of the force versus like 25%. So I think it's kind of around that. I mean, we're looking shortly. We've begun to look quietly for another product designer. Because we really only have 4 or 5, depending on sort of how you count people's roles. And I feel like we could definitely use another product designer. On the development side, we're in pretty good shape, except our security infrastructure performance team's looking for another person, and we're looking for another iOS developer. Those are very, very specific roles, which are, again, easier to measure versus sort of a general person who can be dropped in to do a bunch of different things. So unfortunately, I don't have a great answer for you, like this is how you do it, but I think it depends on the role. It's a lot easier to feel the impact when you have a small team and you hire your next person. Like I'm doing some advising for this company called Delighted, which is out in the West Coast. It's like a customer feedback tool based on Net Promoter Score and something like that. And they have a very small team. There's 3. At least last time I talked to them, there's 3 of them, and they've been struggling to hire their 4th. Not struggling because they don't know if they want to do it. They've decided they want to do it now, but finding that right person to fit in and the whole thing, and they'll have such a huge impact because they're 25%, and the 3 people are the 3 founders, and this will be the first person who's not a founder. Like there's all that struggle that goes along with finding that out too, or finding that right person as well. So I think it depends on the stage of your company, the position, the current staff makeup. You know, part of it too could be like if you want to do three things a month, like your cadence, your three things a month, and you need another product team to do that, like another designer, another developer. Like you could say, because we're only getting 2 things done a month, you could basically say we're gonna get 3 things done a month by getting another functional team versus just another developer, where we might be short then on the design side, may not make the right progress. So sometimes it's like what I've noticed is that hiring is about it's yin yang sort of thing. Like if you just hire another developer, but there's no design work for them to implement, or you hire another designer and the work just sits there because there's no one available to implement it, it's not as good as if you'd hired both sides of that equation and made faster progress.
Yep, I agree with that. Yeah, we've got a lot of stuff like in the hopper that hasn't gotten done, and vice versa. We've got some resources of like ready to do something that like we don't have figured out yet. Yeah.
Like right now, I feel like we could use another product designer to run through some stuff that's 90% design, and make some really significant improvements quickly. But there'd also be a lot more design work on the shelf, you know, perhaps that wouldn't get implemented. So I don't know. it's tricky. I don't know. It's tricky, but
Yes. Some of the things that have been helping is, like I said, the cadence kind of, gets us into the right, it forces us to kind of prioritize. Another thing that, I mean, we keep talking about it, but I swear I'm going to live and die by this rule is like, make something that it's going to have a big impact on my own life and my own team. Like I can't get past like that, how much better I make a product when I use it myself.
yeah,
Granted, it can blind me, I'm sure, to problems my own customers have. And obviously I try and talk to them and keep my eyes open. But, it's the first thing that it's the stuff that I don't use that breaks. It's the stuff that I don't use that's slow, that other people have to tell me that's broken or doesn't work right. So that also kind of helps prioritize things. When I look at like using High-Rise and what we want to accomplish, using it to support our own customers and talk to our own customers, some things naturally just kind of prioritize themselves up.
right.
So, I mean, that's been a big thing too, so really just kind of going back to that core principle of like, well, there's a lot of stuff we can do, but like, I really could use this to help communicate with our customers better. Let's get this done. And it, we gut check and is like, well, are a lot of other people going to use it? Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
That helps.
Yeah. Someone actually asked me on Twitter about this, about if everything we make, we do to scratch our own itch. And I would say 95% of it is that way. And there are some features that we won't use very often because we're this kind of company or that kind of company, but we just know our customers need or want. And so we do those as well. But the ones that you get to work on that you're gonna use, I think end up better because you don't judge quality by proxy. I think when you have to judge quality on behalf of somebody else's needs, you can get there. It's just harder. It's just a lot harder than if you know what you need for your own team and you build that, and then you go, yeah, and you use it over a week every day for 8 hours. You're like, that detail needs to be tightened up or whatever. And there's tons of stuff in the product that's still like, you feel like, it's not quite right, but at least like, it's not quite right, versus you just imagine that it's not quite right if it's on behalf of somebody else.
Right.
Yeah.
And it makes those, I mean, I know you guys do a ton of, jobs to be done interviews, and I feel like it makes those interviews that much more, I feel like you're the stuff where when someone tells it to you that you can empathize with, like you pick up on that stuff so much better. There's more insight from the interview when it's like, oh yeah, I do that same thing, rather than like, tell me this strange scenario that I can't possibly imagine that I'm going to try and, pull a bunch of insight from.
Right. Yeah. I feel like when I run into products that other teams build, when I run into products that other teams use that they build also, like there's a level of craft that you run into in those products that you don't run into when you can tell someone built it on behalf of somebody else. And that's not to say that you can't build something great for other people. You certainly can. There's a zillion examples of it, but there's an extra little touches here and there when people build something for themselves because they run into stuff that bugs them and they just want it out of the way. Yeah.
And I feel like people give up on that too quickly. And I don't know why.
What's that?
Making something that's going to scratch their own itch. I mean, a lot of people come to me talking about products they want to make, ideas they want to make. And I don't know why there's such a quick jump to try and analyze other people's problems when there's so much that you use every day that's broken and could be better. And a lot of people, when I have this conversation with, they're like, yeah, you're right. If I look at my credit card statement, there's so much stuff that I buy that I'm not really happy with.
I think it might be because there's like if someone else tells you they have a problem and it's like they work at a big company, you're like, oh, I could make this thing and a big company will buy it and then it's going to earn me a lot of money, versus if I just make something for myself, it's my own little hobby thing. I don't know. That might be a totally ridiculous guess, but sometimes you think when you build something for someone else, you think about the market. Like, well, the market must be huge because people are telling me they need this thing, and if they're telling me, then who isn't telling me, and that sort of thing. Versus like in my own little head, there's this thing that bugs me, and I'll just make it for myself, and like that's it. I'm unique. I'm a unique snowflake or whatever, and you're not. Everyone has similar problems probably. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's about 30 minutes.
Let's cut it.
cut
I
it?
think that was good. I mean, there's some good stuff we can keep going on, but I think it's going to get worse. I think it's going to get worse if we keep going.
Cool.
We'd
And
like
so tomorrow, I mean, like I said, I've got some. We had brought up some stuff in yesterday's episode about Basecamp projects, and like we keep bringing up some stuff that like I go at night. I'm like, oh man, this would be really great to keep talking about. So I'll wait till maybe tomorrow or
yeah.
the next
Does
day.
your wife wonder like what is he talking about to himself on the couch?
That's right. Well, she's like downstairs listening to all this too. So she's like, what were you guys talking about?
Yeah, you're talking. No one's on the other side. It's just you talking. You know that, right?
Right.
Cool. Well, we'll talk tomorrow. Thanks. Thanks again. This was good.
Cool.
Hope
Thanks,
it was
man.
useful
Have a
for
good day.
everybody listening.
Later. All right.
See ya.